The charity gala looked flawless from the outside and polite, but beneath the smiles, the room felt tight, like everyone knew they were standing on a fault line. When Ivanka Trump walked in, the temperature changed. Her eyes scanned with purpose, skipping faces that didn't matter to her tonight. Then she saw Obama, standing relaxed, surrounded by familiar names, smiling the way someone smiles when they believe the hardest chapters are already behind them. Ivanka didn't slow down. She walked straight toward him, cutting through the space like she'd rehearsed every step. She stopped in front of him and didn't offer a greeting. No handshake, just a cold look and a sharper voice. "You really enjoy rewriting history, don't you?" she said. A few people nearby stiffened. Someone let out a nervous breath. This was already off script. "You talk about values," Ivanka continued, her tone steady but cutting. "But your record tells a different story. Broken promises, weak decisions. You left this country divided and called it progress." She tilted her head slightly like she was studying him. "And now you spend your time lecturing America, acting like you're the moral referee, when you never took responsibility for the damage you caused." The room went quiet fast. Ivanka didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Every word was placed carefully, meant to sting and stick. "You failed," she said plainly, "and the only reason people still listen is because no one's had the nerve to say it to your face." Obama didn't respond. He didn't flinch, didn't interrupt, didn't defend himself. He just looked at her, calm and unreadable. That silence felt heavy, but Ivanka mistook it for weakness. She leaned in slightly, pressing harder. "You built a legacy on speeches," she added. "Pretty words, no backbone. And now you want applause for staying relevant instead of owning what you left behind." Around them, faces shifted. Some guests looked stunned, others looked uncomfortable. A few looked intrigued, like they were watching something dangerous unfold and didn't want to miss a second. After Ivanka's last line, the room froze in a way people weren't used to. No applause, no awkward laughter, no staff rushing in to soften the moment. Everyone instinctively turned toward Barack Obama, waiting for him to push back, to correct the record, to defend himself like politicians always do. But he didn't. Obama stayed exactly where he was. He didn't raise an eyebrow, didn't tighten his jaw, didn't rush to speak. His face was calm, almost neutral, like he was listening to something routine instead of a public attack. The pause stretched longer than comfort allowed. In a city addicted to noise, that kind of silence felt loud, almost confrontational. Someone near the bar cleared their throat. Another guest shifted uncomfortably. The quiet became physical, pressing down on the room. This wasn't confusion or shock. This was restraint. Obama wasn't refusing to answer. He was refusing to be rushed into Ivanka's frame. Ivanka, however, read the moment wrong. She mistook patience for weakness. Her lips pressed into a faint smile, not amused but satisfied. She leaned slightly on one leg, relaxed, arms loose at her sides, like someone who believed the hardest part was already over. "Nothing to say?" she added, just loud enough to sting. "That's usually what happens when the truth hits." A few heads turned sharply at that. The cameras adjusted, sensing escalation. Ivanka kept her eyes locked on him, daring him to move. "You spent 8 years talking," she continued, her tone sharp, almost mocking. "Now suddenly you're quiet. That says more than any speech ever could." Still, Obama said nothing. That's when the room began to change in a way Ivanka didn't notice at first. People stopped reacting to her words. They stopped nodding, stopped watching her posture, stopped feeding her energy. Instead, their focus drifted back to Obama. The longer he stayed silent, the more weight that silence carried. It started to feel intentional, calculated. Guests leaned forward slightly, not toward Ivanka, but toward him. The pause no longer felt empty. It felt loaded, like something was being measured, not avoided. Even the cameras hesitated, unsure which face mattered more now, the one speaking loudly or the one saying nothing at all. Ivanka sensed the shift but didn't understand it. She mistook attention for control and control for victory. She straightened even more, confident to the point of overexposure, believing she had cornered him in front of witnesses. What she didn't realize was that the room had stopped judging Obama and started waiting for him. The gala ended, but the damage didn't. By sunrise, Washington was already buzzing, not publicly, not on television, but in texts, private calls, and hushed conversations behind closed doors. People replayed the scene again and again, Ivanka's sharp words, the way she pressed, the way the room turned, and most of all, the way Barack Obama never answered. In this town, silence like that doesn't fade, it echoes. Strategists started doing what they do best, connecting dots. Ivanka's confidence felt rehearsed to some, reckless to others. A few longtime insiders whispered the same thing in different ways. She pushed too hard. Others said it more bluntly. She picked a fight without knowing the terrain. The night began to look less like a bold confrontation and more like the moment someone stepped on a wire they didn't know was live. Then came the message. No name, no press angle, no demand. Just a quiet outreach to Obama's team, the kind that doesn't beg to be believed because it doesn't need to. The source didn't offer rumors or opinions. The message was short and cold. I have proof, not stories, proof. The team hesitated. In politics, anonymous tips are everywhere, and traps are common. But this felt different. When the files arrived, the first reaction wasn't panic, it was confusion. Old photographs, dated 2005, a private event. Formal clothes, soft lighting, people frozen mid-laugh. Nothing dramatic, nothing obvious. At first glance, it looked like a waste of time. Then someone said her name out loud. Ivanka. She wasn't the focus of the photos, but she was unmistakably there. And once the room focused on her, the details started stacking up. The angle of her body, the way the dress sat, the posture that didn't match the public story everyone had accepted for years. Someone leaned closer to the screen and said quietly, "That doesn't line up." The mood shifted instantly. Forensic analysts were brought in. Metadata was checked, timestamps verified, camera models confirmed. Lighting matched the venue. Shadows matched the time of day. No signs of editing, no signs of manipulation. The photos were authentic. And with that confirmation, the room went silent. Not stunned, but heavy. This wasn't gossip anymore. This was a loaded question with consequences. When Obama was briefed, he didn't react the way Ivanka had at the gala. No sharp words, no visible anger. He listened, studied the images, and asked one thing. Are we sure? When the answer came back yes, he leaned back and said nothing for a long moment. He understood immediately what this meant, not just for Ivanka, but for the story she had tried to control. He didn't rush to leak it, he didn't threaten, he didn't smile. He chose patience, knowing the weight of what had surfaced. Ivanka had thought she was exposing weakness. Instead, she had unknowingly kicked open a door that had been sealed for years, and once that door was open, it couldn't be closed quietly. The real work didn't happen on camera. It happened late at night, behind locked doors, in rooms where nobody joked and nobody rushed. Screens glowed with timelines, file trees, and zoomed-in pixels as specialists went line by line through the material. Metadata was pulled, then pulled again. Timestamps were matched against archive schedules and venue records. Angles were measured. Lighting was compared to floor plans. Every shortcut was rejected. One analyst finally broke the quiet. "If this was fabricated," he said, tapping the screen, "it's the most perfect fake I've ever seen." Another shook his head. "It's not a fake. There's nothing to poke holes in." The words hung there. No one argued. No one needed to. The room understood the same thing at the same time. There was no exit ramp labeled deniability. This was the moment most teams would have sprinted to daylight. Leak a frame, tease a headline, let the noise do the damage. But Barack Obama didn't give the order. He leaned back, listened, and asked questions that slowed everything down. If we move now, what do they say? Silence. If we wait, he continued, who looks nervous first? Someone muttered, they'll call it political. Obama nodded. They'll call it political either way. Then he said the line that settled the room. Truth doesn't need a megaphone, it needs timing. He knew restraint wasn't mercy, it was pressure, applied quietly until the other side cracked under its own weight. While verification finished and folders closed, the decision was made to do nothing. No hints, no trial balloons. Just certainty, sitting still. The contrast with Ivanka's style couldn't have been sharper. She thrived on bold moves and public dominance. He chose patience because patience forces mistakes. Across town, Ivanka felt the air change without knowing why. Calls that used to come fast now came late, if at all. A donor canceled lunch. An advisor shortened a meeting and avoided specifics. When she asked what was going on, someone shrugged and said, probably nothing, too quickly. That word, probably, stuck with her. She replayed the gala again, hearing her own voice, watching his face in her memory. The silence she'd mocked now felt intentional, almost taunting. Say something, she'd wanted him to say that night. Now she wondered what he was choosing not to say. The confidence was still there, but it had a hairline fracture running through it. Behind closed doors, pressure built with no release valve. No leaks meant no relief. No headlines meant no distraction. Just verified facts waiting for gravity to do its work. Ivanka didn't know what she'd triggered, only that something heavy was moving toward her, and whatever it wasn't rushing. Obama's plan wasn't loud, it wasn't clever, it didn't rely on outrage or spin. It was built around one idea: remove emotion, remove motive, and leave only facts standing in the open. Barack Obama insisted on it from the start. No insults, no character attacks, no raised voices. If the story was strong, it would survive calm daylight. His team mapped every step like a slow march, not a charge. They agreed on what would be shown, what would be withheld, and, most importantly, what questions would be asked and left unanswered. The language mattered. Every word was weighed for tone, not impact. This wasn't about winning an argument. It was about placing a weight on the table and letting everyone feel it. When the moment came, Obama didn't appear angry or triumphant. He appeared steady, the kind of steady that made people sit up without realizing why. He spoke as someone carrying responsibility, not revenge. He explained the verification process plainly, without drama, without shortcuts, like he was walking the public through something they deserved to understand. He didn't accuse, he didn't speculate. He paused, looked up, and delivered the line that changed the room. If any of this is false, he said evenly, prove it. No threat, no flourish, just a challenge framed as an invitation. In that moment, the burden shifted cleanly and completely. The effect was immediate and quiet. Analysts stopped arguing about intent and started asking about evidence. Reporters stopped debating tone and started checking timelines. What had once been Ivanka's bold attack was now a mirror turned back on her. The cameras didn't chase outrage anymore, they hunted answers. Cable news cut into programming, panels argued over each other, and every major outlet ran the same split screen. Ivanka at the gala, calm and cutting, beside the new reality where questions hung unanswered. Social media did the rest. Clips were slowed, looped, captioned, and recaptioned until her confidence became the punchline. What once looked fearless now looked careless. Online, the tone turned savage. Commentators replayed her line, "You failed," and stacked it against the silence that followed days later. So bold then, so quiet now, one viral post read. Memes spread faster than corrections ever could. People weren't debating policy anymore, they were judging judgment. The crowd sensed blood, and the pile-on accelerated. That's when Donald Trump stepped forward to smother the fire and poured gasoline instead. From podiums and rally stages, he denied everything in sweeping terms. Fake, manipulated AI nonsense, he snapped, promising lawsuits and calling it a coordinated hit job. The louder he got, the shakier it sounded. Each denial spawned a new question, each threat invited a deeper dig. Reporters pushed back in real time. If it's fake, where's the proof? Who altered it? When did you first know? The answers slid sideways, then doubled back. The tone shifted from confident dismissal to open irritation. The more he talked, the less control it felt like anyone had. Viewers didn't hear certainty, they heard strain. Ivanka was dragged fully into the eye of the storm. Her phones lit up with messages that offered support and distance in the same breath. Old interviews resurfaced, every poised sentence, every calculated smile, now replayed under harsher lighting. Analysts juxtaposed her gala posture with later appearances, noting the tightened jaw, the shorter answers, the moments she avoided eye contact. The contrast told a story she didn't get to narrate. She wanted the spotlight, a commentator said on air, and now she's standing in it. Another added, "This is what happens when confidence outruns caution." Past quotes were excavated and read back to her, stripped of context and reloaded as accusations. The image of the unshakable operator cracked, then fractured. By nightfall, the narrative had flipped completely. Ivanka was no longer the challenger dictating terms. She was the subject under a microscope, measured against her own words. Every attempt to push back only tightened the frame around her. The noise didn't end with a bang. It thinned out slowly, the way storms do when they've already done their damage. What lingered wasn't outrage anymore, but comparison. People stopped arguing and started weighing. Loudness against credibility, provocation against preparation. The contrast became impossible to ignore because it didn't need explaining. It had already played out in public. On one side was volume, fast hits, sharp lines, pressure meant to dominate a room. On the other was restraint, timing, verification, and the patience to let gravity do the work. The city read that difference clearly. One style tried to seize the moment. The other let the moment mature until it carried its own weight, and when the dust settled, it was obvious which one lasted. For Ivanka Trump, the cost wasn't immediate or dramatic. It arrived quietly. Invitations paused, allies hedged. Conversations shifted from certainty to caution. She wasn't beaten by a comeback or a headline. She was worn down by time, by scrutiny, by the simple refusal of facts to move faster than they were ready to move. The irony wasn't lost on anyone paying attention. Her bold strike had demanded instant reaction, and when it didn't come, it created space for everything else to catch up. Each day without resolution tightened the frame around her. The confidence that once commanded attention now invited examination, not condemnation, just questions, unanswered and accumulating. And then there was Barack Obama. He didn't press, he didn't gloat, he didn't add a final flourish to claim victory. He stopped where he had always stopped, with the question still hanging. If the facts were wrong, prove it. If they were right, explain them. Either way, he was finished speaking. That last silence landed heavier than any rebuttal. It left no target to attack and no line to twist. The room understood what it meant. The story no longer needed narration. It would move on its own, carried by what had already been shown and what still hadn't been answered. And in that quiet, the reckoning was complete. Not declared, not celebrated, just left to stand. If you followed the story from the first sharp word to the final silence, then you already know this wasn't just a clash of personalities, it was a test of power, timing, and restraint, and the outcome didn't come from shouting louder, but from waiting longer. If you want to keep breaking down moments like this, where confidence collides with consequences and silence says more than speeches ever could, stay with us. Subscribe and join the conversation, because stories like this don't end when the cameras stop rolling, they keep unfolding in the quiet that follows.